in person and to everyone who's logged in virtually. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Um, I think if there's conversation about the mid-scale segment in India, you'd be hard-pressed to find a more illustrious panel than the gentleman we have here today. So it's my absolute pleasure and privilege to be able to moderate this session with you. Thanks for being here. Before we get to the actual topic here and the specifics around that, gentlemen, I just wanted to ask a few moments from you to tell us a little about what you've been up to. We've all caught up after 18 months. Just to give us a lowdown on your companies. Rohit, if you can.
So, few things. First of all, making sure that we use the time well for the last 18 months, introduced tons of new technology products. Second, I think made sure that all our partner network is up and running over the last 18 months, and we're glad that most of it is back. And now things are looking up quite significantly. And third is, I think, prepare for what seems like coming to be a very strong travel and tourism rebound.
Great.
Yeah.
Mr. Baljee?
See, this was a crisis which we have never seen before. I've been in the business for almost now 50 years. So I don't think this type of crisis we ever imagined in our life. But anyways, we had to take it as a challenge. And I think every challenge has an opportunity also. So we said that, okay, this is a time to reset the business and the new normal, which we were trying to do all this while, making the organization a little more efficient, which we could not do because there'll always be resistance from the existing people. But this time people realize that, if we don't adjust, then we'll have to close down. So everybody did a great deal of cost cutting. And of course, this time has been a little bit good also for us because a lot of hotels which we were negotiating with, sitting on the fence that business is going on all right. But when the pandemic hit, then they realized that it's best to tie up with the chain. So I think to that extent, it has been a good and bad run for us. But I am an ever optimist. So I think things today we are finding that a large number of hotels in September will be, crossing the pre-COVID levels out of a hotel, a large number of hotels. Overall, if you combine, I think the whole thing, everything will be there. But then certain hotels are performing better, certain are yet to catch up. But I think unless there's a big shocker of a third wave or so, I think this next quarter should definitely cross the 19 figures.
Happy to hear that. Thank you. Samir, a little update on Fortune?
So I think at Fortune, few things, like everybody else, it was a difficult one to start understanding and grappling with the situation at the beginning. I think we at least the three of us have done multiple Zoom sessions in the beginning, trying to explain to everybody while we were ourselves trying to figure out what it is. So from there, of course, key things which we would have learned or experienced along the way was that it's there for a longer term than what we thought it would be, and hence trying to support hotels with preparing to deal with a lot of things which what we call now the new normal, but just change in behaviors, change in expectations. Cleanliness, hygiene was never so much the focus as it is today. It has always been a basic requirement, but today it's become a lot more than a basic requirement. So helping hotels to go through that. The other key one we learned was that we also had to help hotels to efficiently keep operations in suspension or shut down while lockdowns were there in place, so that you don't have a huge cost going back into the business when you start reopening, which I realized as we now meet potential owners who are operating existing hotels on a standalone basis, of how they've probably had to reinvest a lot of money because air conditioners, hot water systems and all, they had shut off and they had not maintained it. And we realized that there's actually a lot of money we were able to save while guiding hotels with just basic principles of keeping a hotel in good shape. So those were some of the key learnings. The other big one was definitely supporting people around us. While the real part of the story is that at hotel level, we did have a lot of, challenges in managing costs, keeping employees on the rolls, so leave without pays. That's all very stressful. So how do you keep motivation levels so that as people, start getting into full-time work again, it's a lot more positive than negative. So those were some of the key things which I guess we did over the last 18 months or so.
Thank you. Suhail?
Yeah, hi. So a lot of what they've said. Last, I think 18 months has been spent in trying to find the opportunities in this crisis. And that's where everything has gone. All efforts have been gone to try and find the opportunities in the crisis, whether it's home delivery, wherever the revenue streams are, whether it's growth in terms of non-branded hotels coming into the branded portfolio, or even how to open a new hotel during these pandemic. Because we've opened a few new hotels that have just seen the light of day during the pandemic. And that actually has given us a lot of learning. So I think that's what the last 18 months
Sure.
has been, just finding those opportunities.
Just to put in context the size of the operations that we're talking about, I did look at your brand websites. OYO, I gave up. The number was too large. I mean, I'm trying to get a sense of how big is your portfolio in India right now, just to share with our attendees.
Yeah.
Mr. Baljee, and I will come to you, Rohit, because I do want that number.
Yeah.
If you have that number.
That number probably combined all the all the hotels in the whole conference. Yeah.
And I did get numbers, but I'm guessing over the last 18 months, those numbers may not be the most accurate representation of what is currently the case. So,
See, we have about 70 hotels now, operating hotels, and we have another about 18 hotels under implementation signed up. And our target is, of course, to try to reach 100 figure by the end of next financial year. It was trying to target to this financial year, but it's not going to happen. A lot of projects have got stalled. And totally, we have about 4,500 rooms right now. And so I think this is bound to grow.
okay.
Yeah.
And I guess you were saying that your focus going forward would be on the Regenta brand versus Royal Orchid.
Yes, see, Royal Orchid brand we stopped using several years back for our new properties because we had some dispute. So we said that, look here, we will focus on Regenta brand, and it's Regenta is the 5-star. Then you have Regenta Central as 4-star. Then Regenta Place as 3-star, and Regenta Inn as budget hotels. So that is the kind of portfolio we have, and we've been adding hotels in all categories. We've been adding. Of course, smaller hotels normally come in category. So, working.
And where would you say you're seeing more of a growth among those 4 sub brands? Where are you seeing a larger traction over the last, not just 18 months, but in the recent past?
I would say in the 4-star category, Central and Inns.
Okay.
Budget and these. This is the category of that. See, 5-star, I can understand. People have a lot more options and bigger and maybe better options, I must admit. So I don't think anybody who wants to run a 5-star hotel would necessarily come to us. They are. I'm not saying there are some in the pipeline. Yes, they are. But mostly you'll see people going to the big brands. If they talk of 5-star, whether it's a foreign brand or some of the top Indian brand. But otherwise, I think these 2 areas we are seeing a lot of traction.
Samir?
So again, in terms of our portfolio, basically, we currently have 40 hotels. We have another 12 in the pipeline. So fairly stable in that sense. We are present across pretty much a lot of tier 2, tier 3 locations. And of course, a good mix of around 1/3 of our properties in leisure locations. So over the last few years, what we've been seeing is we've figured out that sweet spot of that mid-scale to upper mid-scale, and that's where we realize that we have a great positioning. So that's the focus for us as well.
And Suhail, with Fern?
Yeah, so we have about 84 hotels that are currently operating. In the pipeline, we've got another 21 hotels. So it's 105 that are signed to open. Most of the hotels are within the Fern and Fern Residency brand. We've got about 13 hotels in our economy brand, which is Beacon. And we've also launched a new brand during the pandemic, a bit of a takeover brand kind of activity, which is Zinc, where we've got a hotel operating in Bangalore.
And that's the brand primarily in, I guess, it's Southeast Asia or China.
So it
Can you
originated
tell
out
us a
of
little
there.
more about Zinc and Beacon?
So Beacon is an economy brand, also inherited, where when we did our first round of private equity, we bought it over from the private equity, and it was in cold storage till about 2015. 2015, we decided to grow that portfolio in economy segment space, and we're about 13 hotels with another 3 that are signed in that space. And then
Zinc?
with Zinc, that we took over in 2019, actually, just before the pandemic, where we took it over from our partners, Chaudhary Group, where they've got a couple of properties under the Zinc portfolio in China. And we just launched one in Bangalore, which was in the middle of the pandemic.
Okay. Rohit, if I may, can I get a number on your portfolio in India?
Yeah. So I'll give you the overall global numbers, and these numbers are not comparable. We have different model. As of 31st March of this year, we run about 100, or we on our platform there are about 157,000 hotels and homes across about 35 countries, and that portfolio, I think, in the context of what the world has to offer. So, as per our estimates, there are about 54 million such hotels and homes globally in the markets that we operate. So, while we have grown a little bit over the years, there's still a very large opportunity out there to pursue.
So you probably
But
signed
these
up
numbers are not comparable. I think for when you own and operate a hotel versus how we operate, right? So it's slightly unfair to put these large numbers, and our model is indeed different. So allows us to get to scale a little bit differently.
So I'm assuming you would have signed on a few more hotels before this panel discussion gets over. But
I hope so. My teams are working.
But leading on from that, Rohit, I want to ask you the next question now. I know that Oyo, had different models with which you engaged with hotels.
Yeah.
Has that undergone a change? Is that, what is the way forward that you see, given the sheer, size of your portfolio? What do you see as the way forward?
So just to simplify what we do, because sometimes it can appear very complicated. It is not. We are a two-sided platform, okay, and we are essentially a technology and product company is the way we think about it. So we have more engineers than business development people by a significant margin. For the 54 million storefronts which are out there, we plug in technology and product which allows them to do two simple things. One is give them an uplift on their revenues, right, for a period of time. And second is to these are small operations, right, often with 4 or 5 people, or even sometimes 1 or 2 people managing the entire show. So for them, just give a very simple, intuitive software to manage everything, right, which is on the app. That's one part why so many thousands of storefronts, as we call them, or hotels and homes, are on part of the platform. For the consumer, I think it is very interesting. It is 3 things. One is ubiquity, right? Is choice. You want 5 options in the South Delhi area in a particular micro market, you'll probably get it at different price points. Second is ease of booking. I welcome everyone to try our app and book a hotel. It is literally 2 clicks. I promise you it's under 30 seconds probably, or maybe slightly longer than that. So ease of booking. And third is really assurance that you're walking in with a brand behind you in a variety of different countries, cities, and places. And there's someone to call and a chat to offer. So if you just think of it in 2 different terms, and our repeat rates and all are quite significant, like more than 70% of our consumers repeat over different quarters. So that shows that once they come onto the platform, they tend to use it again and again, which again is a flywheel effect on supply side, because that's the reason hotels and homes want to come to us and partner with us.
So you did mention, Rohit, that the spotlight is clearly on the technology platform and the guest experience from a tech point of view, or even your client in terms of hotel owners. Some of the other panelists talked about how a lot of the focus over the last 18 months has been on, preparing or understanding the new normal. COVID protocols were in place. Um, has there been any support in terms of helping the hotel owners who, in many cases, like you said, are probably a husband-wife combo or one or two member teams? How do they cope with this? What we're now referring to as a new normal. How do you ensure that the protocols, be it hygiene, safety, security, etc., are maintained?
Yeah. So look, our learning, and we've been in touch with our partners and consumers more frequently over the last 18 months than ever in history of the company. I personally talk to them every week practically. So let me give you 3 examples, because it's sometimes not very intuitive saying how do you influence such a large network to adopt certain practices or protocols. One simple truth I've learned is, for the small entrepreneur, who's typically our partner, anything that you can link to business and survival, they get and they do. It's as simple as that. If you just say that do it for the good of the world, it is tougher. They understand it, but if you can show clear linkage to saying this also helps you grow your business or sustain your business, it's very easy to land. So 3 examples. One is where we, along with the rest of the industry, we launched something called sanitized stays, which was a tag we gave as long as they were able to show us that they were following certain practices. Second is something very interesting and counterintuitive. During last year's second half, and one of the consumer panels we are speaking, and we are picking up saying, consumers saying, how do we know the room was sanitized? So, say, what will give you assurance? And they said, what if do it in front of our eyes? Now, just imagine, it is so counterintuitive that you're cleaning a room in front of the eyes in front of the customer. It's almost like anathema to the hospitality sector, right? Because it should be clean, proper before the check-in happens. But in a period of uncertainty, that was a big revelation for us, and we launched a product called Sanitize Before Your Eyes, where a second-level cleaning was done in front when the customer was checking in. So switches, handles, that though hotels and homes which adopted that were showing a delta in terms of bookings. That was a second example. Third was during vaccination, and one of the things that look, I also come from a healthcare background. I used to be in healthcare before OYO, and we said, how do we sort of encourage our staff to partner staff to get vaccinated? We said something very simple. We said, you show us that you vaccinated yourself and your staff, we give you a tag called Vaccinate. Vaccinate is on the app. And we told the consumers that anytime you see this tag, you know this hotel is fully vaccinated. Right? That again increased business for them immediately, because hotels which had that versus not, they were showing a delta in performance. We went back and told them, look, and today that there are thousands of hotels with vaccinate tag. So I think and it all happened through the app. This happens on the partner app. We don't call everyone and say, do this, right? We roll out the program, show it on the app, show them results, show them data, and the flywheel starts operating.
Sure. To the other panelists, and I'm doing that differentiation because it's, I think, quite different in terms of the roles, right? How do you feel about, between yesterday and even earlier today, when we had the other panel discussions, and a lot of the, quite illustrious global brands focus a big part of the time on the mid-scale segment. How do you see that going forward? Potentially the brands that earlier may not be in your space are now more actively looking at that. How do you think that augurs for your positioning in the market, Mr. Baljee?
See, one of the things which, like, we are relatively a small player. So we are constantly in touch with our owners. And whereas a large brand which is totally professionally managed, or maybe an international brand, you don't see a face to a name. So where today somebody is there, tomorrow somebody is not there. So I would say in our company, there's been a lot of stability. So at a large number of levels, top level, even middle level, a lot of stability. So Indians are a little sentimental also, and owners also. They want to connect with the person, not connect with the designation. So, somebody signed a hotel, now that fellow's face is not ever seen again. The largest change that will happen. The guy is a development guy and he's never seen again. Well, in our case, the operation, development, all are, in one umbrella. So I think, it's definitely, yes, there is a challenge because bigger chains are coming into the budget space. And today they are also getting into franchising. And, and there is, even in our country, there is still that thing about Gori Chambri, somebody abroad and he has to be better. Still that feeling is there. I talk to so many people when on there was that foreign brand. It was, that's coming to me. It has selected my hotel. So, they feel proud. I say, it should be the other way around. But no. He says, oh, no, this brand has selected me. He's approved my site. So he feels so elated that this is what happened and you're going to pay for it. But this is what is happening. But this pandemic has given a rude shock to a lot of those people. Because there they find the fees are very high and they refuse to budge. Whereas we have, worked with owners, say if you can't pay the fees, okay, don't run the hotel. Of course, we try to maintain hotels, keep a minimum staff, but say, okay, you cut down the cost. What can he do? If he doesn't have money, how can you force him to pay for the general manager? So that is the essential difference between, Indian brands and foreign brand. They will come in. I know they'll eat it, but market itself is expanding also now.
Sure, which I think has been the general sentiment over the last day and a half.
Yeah.
That there's enough in the market for everyone to, be a part of the recovery. Samir, please feel free to answer the same question, but I do have one more for you. Okay. Given your specific career path, both in India as well as parts of Southeast Asia, positioning a mid-scale brand doesn't automatically mean that the guest expectation is mid-scale. We've seen other brands come in, especially some of the international brands, when they bring a mid-scale version to India. The market demand and stipulation has led to that brand experience forcibly sometimes having to be elevated versus what the global template may have been. What has been your experience, both with Fortune and also with your previous stints, in terms of guest expectation in a mid-scale hotel?
Sure. So I'll answer both because I
Sure.
can go a little bit on the earlier one as well. I think to your question on how do we feel in terms of international brands coming into the mid-scale, actually it's the other way around, right? The international brands have been forever in mid-scale. If you look at the Indian companies, especially say 20-25 years back, it was only Taj, ITC and Oberoi. So there were only 3 hotel companies who were primarily into luxury. We also started looking at mid-scale because we realized that there were all these international brands who were doing great in mid-scale. That's how 20-25 years back, we started branding mid-scale hotels, right? So that's probably the first starting point. Of course, the international companies started coming in first to the big cities and then started looking at tier 2, tier 3 markets. Probably the fact that most of these companies came in with expatriate leadership teams didn't help them grow as fast as they could have. They also looked at India as a copy-paste model of other locations. But if you look at in the last 10, 12 years, most companies have changed the approach to leading India, irrespective of which brand it was. I think you saw Dilip sitting here. He was probably one of the first leaders which you can see how Starwood grew much faster than the others in those days, purely because they had somebody who understood it. The other one is, of course, Radisson with Mr. Kachru. So I think the international companies have also learned that. And if you see today, all international companies have Indian heads of business, right? So compared to say 7, 8 years back or 10 years back. So that's probably the one big change. The other thing is that, yes, we are all, fairly well established into the mid-scale tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 markets. We operate in tier 4 markets as well, which I think international companies will take a while to get there as much as they would want to. So they have tried to look at India as the next China, the next US, etc. But markets like India and Indonesia have their own nuances, which can't be copy-pasted from US or China. So that's where they will probably have to take a bit of a, relearning before they expand into those markets. Having said that, we can already see good presence. The good part is that the way we are growing across these markets, there's going to be enough space for a lot of brands around, right? So it's about how you are showcasing a better value proposition, not just to the owners, but also to the guests and employees eventually, so that you continue to be a preferred brand. So that's probably a challenge for all of us to deal with ourselves. In terms of your second question, which was on
Guest
expectations, especially in the mid-scale. So I think there's a little bit of graying between what mid-scale is, because some people look at mid-scale purely from a select service angle, which is what some of the international brands have done very well. But having said that, the mid-scale also has a huge demand for full service. So it's about understanding which part of the customer expectations are you pitching in for. So there are certain locations, certain customer segments who are absolutely only looking for limited service, select service, as the international brands call it, and they can be well catered to. But especially in India, there's a huge segment or a huge population who expects full service irrespective of mid-scale or upscale or luxury, because those are terms we as hoteliers have coined, right? The customer doesn't know that term. He doesn't say, I'm a mid-scale customer and I'm going to a mid-scale hotel. He's going to a hotel. So, and the fact is that we have probably gone into hospitality a lot more than, say, the Western countries forever. So I could be staying in a guest house or a lodge paying 1,200 rupees. But when I come out of the taxi, there is a guy standing there to help me take my bag because he knows he gets his 10 rupee tip. So from there, when you walk into a international branded select service hotel, which is charging you 4,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees, but says there is a trolley like at the airport and you carry your own bag, suddenly it's a resistance. I could have done it at the airport just half an hour back myself, but here I won't do it because it's an expectation. So if I go back to my previous stint, trying to launch select service in India, we did struggle with that part. So we had to go and debate with our team in Atlanta on how brand standards might have to be changed. And interestingly, in my previous stint, we had done a similar one in Southeast Asia, where some markets like Singapore and Bangkok was very easy to embed it. But we had the same challenge in markets like Indonesia. So there are cultural nuances or customer behaviors which could be different from location to location. So I guess that's purely from the select service perspective. From a full service perspective, I think we go the full gamut, right? So you go to our restaurants and look at our buffet breakfast. Of course, the fact that we have a parent who does food and beverage very well, ITC Hotels. So our chefs come from ITC Hotels, and hence our buffet breakfasts are inspired by most of it we do. Of course, we try to compress it, but that's definitely an advantage we have as well.
Thank you. Suhail, by virtue of your location on this panel, you get the snowball effect of having both questions to respond to.
Sure. So one of the key differences between the international guys getting into the mid-scale space and what we've done as a domestic level on mid-space is that we've got feet on ground. For our customers in the mid-scale space are primarily domestic. Even in a city like Bombay, where we've got both, as a personal experience, we've got both the upscale as well as a mid-scale hotel. The upscale hotels saw pre-COVID a 70% expat clientele, while as the mid-scale hotel just saw about 20% expat clientele. So the domestic clientele towards the mid-scale in India is huge. And a lot of that business is sourced by feet on ground, by your sales teams on ground, which all of the domestic chains will have. The international chains, some of them have adopted to that, some haven't yet adopted to that. So I think that's a big differentiating factor. Then in terms of the clientele, I think the Indian clientele, as Samir put it, is very aspirational. You can go to any property here. You will get your chai in your room if you order it. And if you're not ready to do that, if you're not ready to be full service, you're closing doors, you're closing options of customers. Okay. And that, again, in smaller towns is a big challenge. In major metros, people are more accepting. But if you go to a small town, tier 3 city, they're not going to accept
limited service. Select service.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. The other topic that advertently and inadvertently has found its way into many other panel discussions over the last 24 hours or so is about homestays. Now, again, a lot of the big brands who otherwise may not have looked at that segment have now started actively either operating it or are looking at getting into that space. Um, do you have any similar thoughts? Do you think, for instance, and I'm not feeding an answer, but that being already in a smaller footprint sort of hotels, it might be easier for you to adapt to operating a homestay, for instance. Um, and I'll maybe go in the reverse direction. So, Suhail, if I can maybe start with you, what are your thoughts on that?
So personally, I love the space of homestays. I, as a traveler and a consumer, love to stay in homestays. Uh, I've not really understood the financials of it because the scale is small. So whether you'd be able to really drive profitability in it through a management model or franchise model, I'm a little wary. As an ownership, you will probably have some level of profitability on it. So it's not a space that we are looking at getting into purely as a homestay, but it's in a kind of hybrid model. It's something that we are exploring in the future.
Okay.
So the way we look at it is we did explore it, and probably at this stage, I would say that Fortune will not be looking at homestays as such, because I think we will have to switch our operating approach as well. It's not exactly copy pasting what I do at Fortune. So in that sense, it's probably easier for me to just look at the huge opportunity we have to just grow our current model, right? So, and I think that's where we are best optimizing our resources. So it just sort of is a very different approach, as you heard in the morning as well on the panel. So I wouldn't think that we would want to get into that at this stage. What we are doing as a company is, of course, looking at the experiential, the boutique leisure space. And hence, for that, we've specifically come up with a brand called The Story, which ITC Hotels has just announced that we will be launching that brand. So we have a few very interesting and active discussions going on, and definitely will be sharing with you some news around that as well.
We look forward to that.
Yeah.
Mr. Baljee?
See, I think, that's a total different ball game, because it's very, very little you're getting for so much of work you are doing. See, I have a home in Simla. Okay. Now, I put it on Airbnb. I said, okay, at least it'll cover. I go once a year, maybe for 2 days. And then we spend about 50,000 rupees a month on maintaining that house. So, I think sometimes I cover my costs by somebody coming in. Sometimes I don't cover my costs. So, as it's okay to utilize some spare capacity, like maybe Uber does or Ola does, where somebody's already got a place and he wants to get additional income. That is different. But if you are going to be doing it yourself, so as a company, I don't think we like to focus on hotels as such. So much to be done there, rather than focusing now on homestays or whatever it is there. Not at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rohit, I'm going to change that question slightly in your case. Pardon my ignorance, but does OYO have homestays in your portfolio, and how big a focus area do you see that going forward?
So we do have, so our European business, for example, is the second largest vacation home player in in Europe, and that's entirely a range of homes, villas, chalets. But even in India, the homes business is there. I just want to say two things about it. One is that when we say homestays and where people like us have gone last 2.5 years, is definitely a very attractive segment, but it's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Truly, homestays are all around the country. I've stayed in Orchha, in a village. My team right now, in fact, is in Ladakh looking at few homestay options there. That market is very large, right? And that literally the way also state governments and government is planning to actually open that up as a second source of income for farmers, for people who are locals. And there, the only way it works, in my mind, is a franchise model where the labor of the person or the family itself is sort of the hidden cost structure, right? And that's why the model can work, because otherwise the units are so small, there's no other way to operate those. So because It's sort of when your family is maintaining a homestay, what is the technically the labor cost is zero, but it's not really zero. There is the opportunity cost of that labor somewhere. That model will work, and I think we'll see happening is across the board, state governments and government will put big push behind it, and frankly, this will bring I think not thousands but lakhs of people mainstreaming into travel ecosystem and revenue pools that we haven't imagined that way happening. And what the consumer seems to be very clear in her choice of asking more and more for it. And whenever the consumer is that clear in their choice, the supply ecosystem evolves on its own.
So interesting, because I think the point you've touched upon, there was an audience question yesterday on is there scope for positioning differentiators within that homestay segment? And I think you're alluding to that because we've talked about an Ama and we've talked about other brands recently who will have a minimum threshold or a quality or an experience.
Let me give
Whereas there's several more options.
Let me
in
give
that
a personal
space.
example. Sikkim. 10 years back, I was there on vacation. We went to Gurdungmar, North Sikkim. From Gangtok, we carried rice, vegetables, and all because there are no hotels on that route. And every day we'll stop at a home. We'll give the material to them. The family will cook it. We'll have it. The charge was 300 rupees a night for the entire family. Right. So it starts from there. That's where, it's very hard to imagine a 300 rupee a night offering. But it starts from there and goes all the way to 1 lakh rupees a night, which you can spend in a fancy villa and go. So the market is really, really wide. It is not as narrow as Instagram photos will have us believe.
Yeah, they may not be very Instagrammable, but they are great experiences.
They are very Instagrammable. It's hard to reach.
Okay. Just sort of changing track. The first part of our agenda topic was serving the Heartland. My interpretation of that was to actually go beyond the tier 2, tier 3, and all of you have presence over there. Mahatma Gandhi said the soul of India lies in its villages. Paraphrasing that, the soul of India does go beyond the metros and the larger cities. And you have actually been pragmatic enough to have a presence over there. Looking at just your websites and where you are was like a geography lesson for me. There were parts of India I had never heard of. I had to actually go back and Google and say, okay, which part of the country, and why would a hotel of your caliber, be there? So it was geographical and educational to know that there is an SEZ in Dahej. New to me. It's 48-hour-old knowledge. So thanks to this panel discussion. But, some of the locations, Mr. Baljee, Bhuj, Sambalpur, Dahej, Shimoga, Bharatpur, Bharuch. Suhail, you have hotels in Junagadh, Hubli, Satara, Morbi. I haven't been able to figure out where Morbi was.
Morbi is where all tiles come from.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay.
All the ceramic tiles.
I'm showcasing my ignorance here, but yeah. Rohit, yours was too wide to look at. But even the Fortune Group, Dahej was actually a recurring location there, and I mentioned that to you last evening. So when you go beyond, and a lot of our careers have been shaped in the larger cities, larger hotels, more established structures before we branched off. What were some of the unique challenges that you faced as operators, going into some of these locations vis-a-vis the template that you may have been used to? Maybe Samir, if we start with you on this.
Sure. So I think probably the first one is trying to understand the nuances of that location and the market. Definitely, that's the first one. The second one is probably from a people perspective, and the third one is looking at how do you drive demand into that location. So if I just try to break it into these three, when I say nuances of the market, we also realize that as we started getting into those locations, and now I'm talking about history preceding me because it's quite a few years back, this company has been into tier 3, tier 4 locations. We opened a hotel in Vapi 20 years back. Vapi was a very small town, still a small town, but we have quite a few of those locations. Dahej is one of the newer ones. But I think it was understanding the nuances of the location which was critical at that time, because we also went in with knowledge gained from running hotels in big cities. So there was a lot of learnings which we also went through, primarily through our partners, the hotel owners and the team there, because there's a lot of collaboration you end up doing. Of course, today it's much easier for me because we have a set format of walking into any new location and saying we understand what to do. We can also copy paste things we have done in other locations and learn from that. So I think it's a lot easier for us today than what it was, say, 10 years back to try and understand. So that's probably the first one I would say. The second one is from a people perspective. Definitely, it's hard to understand how you'll source or resource people into those locations, right? So initially, definitely that was the challenge. We still do have certain skill-related challenges in certain locations. The advantage of us being a larger company is that we're able to move people around and send them to these locations with sort of at least saying, I'll keep you there for a year and a half, 2, and then move you out, give you a better location. So there is a career progression there. The interesting part there also is that it's important to have people who are from that local location as well, because there are some inherent skill sets and knowledge base which you pick up from there. As we grow, we also see that there are a lot of people, especially now with the pandemic, who are wanting to go back to their hometowns or those small locations. So we're suddenly seeing a little bit of uptake in locations, preferences, which maybe 5 years back was not as obvious, right? So interestingly, we signed a hotel in a location called, I can do a geography test for you, Deoghar. I'm not sure if many people have heard of Deoghar, but in fact, 3 years back, I didn't know where Deoghar was. We signed the hotel a year and a half back. It's in Jharkhand. It's very famous for the Baba Baidyanath, so one of the 12 Jyotirlingas. But interestingly, it's got a new airport coming up next year. No, actually, end of this year. There's an AIMS already, second year started. So there's quite a few things happening. But a chef from my previous company who's currently working in Dubai wrote into me a couple of weeks back saying that, my parents are now aging. When are you opening the hotel? I would like to apply for the executive chef role. He's an executive sous chef in one of the hotels run by my previous company. And so I was like, wow, that is great to have reverse migration going on into those locations. So definitely people is a critical part into locations, tier 3 and beyond. And the third one is, of course, demand. Which is relatively easier because when we go into those locations, we know what are the demand drivers, and typically we have seen the demand drivers continue growing. Amazing thing which I see in the last 5-7 years is the improvement in infrastructure. So definitely with connectivity of roads becoming a lot better, airports. If you look at the number of airports which have come up in the last few years, and as you see plans for new airports coming up with the Udan scheme, and also definitely a lot of potential for us to get into tier 3, tier 4 locations. We both were talking about Hubli because we both opened a hotel in Hubli in the last 6 months. When we signed that hotel in Hubli, they had 2 years back, they had 6 flights a day, and now it's 18 flights a day. And I think by end of the year, they're aiming at 24 flights a day. So
international as well.
So a small town of Hubli is having 24 flights a day. So we can really imagine the connectivity into various tier 3, tier 4 locations across the country. So I would say definitely huge potential just if we look at these 3 factors.
Mr. Baljee, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think Samir has pretty much covered the whole thing. It's just that, in all these locations, getting the right person there, because everybody aspires to go to a bigger hotel, bigger city. That's been the trend. But yes, pandemic, has forced people to think, go back nearer home, nearer family. So that has been a positive also. So there's not everything negative about the pandemic. Some things have turned to be positive also. But yes, you got to do much larger number to get the same number. Like in our case, probably our flagship hotel does more in good times, more GOP than the entire portfolio combined. So, there's a different scale. Like a Marriott Sheraton would do, so much more than maybe the entire Fortune or the Welcome hotels combined. So, we got to understand that, do you want to be, going that route, or you want to go to, a route where you make certain big hotels and then go forward? And I think probably they've shown the way that probably, scale has definitely some benefit also.
Sure. Suhail, I'm going to just ask you a different question slightly. Another term that was referred to in Mr. Puri's session earlier today was reactive development. So, some of these locations, the H, for example, is because of the SEZ close by. A lot of these locations have been chosen by the brands because there is some development activity, which means that, I mean, while logically your market segment is skewed towards business from there, how comfortable would a company like yours be putting, for want of a better analogy, putting all your eggs in one basket? Is there a market mix that you work on? Do you try and stimulate other segments to come in there? Do you have any examples that maybe you can talk about?
So, as a management company, a lot of your development is reactive development, but there's a reason for this reactive development. It's when in a small town, and so in the mid-market segment and in the tier 3 cities, non-metro cities, just to give you a little bit, about 37% of our inventory that we have currently sits in a non-metro, non-leisure destination. So there's a reason why the developers there are putting up hotels, because there is a market. And what we've seen is that the market in these destinations is a lot more stable, considering the period that it's gone through, compared to what the market in a metro city was. The numbers are much smaller. So as Mr. Baljee said, my one hotel in Bombay probably does more revenue than the entire 37
Right.
put together. But the dip that I saw in those 37% hotels has been only 30%. Versus what I saw in my metros was 70% dip in revenue, right? So it's a lot more stable. There are some brilliant advantages in terms of getting to these places that is happening right now. One is this: it's a lot more stable in terms of this. Manufacturing as a industry in India is really picking up, and most of these areas are manufacturing hubs, where the the developers who are putting up these hotels have a small manufacturing unit and things. So it is their bread and butter. If they do not do it, if they don't get back to work, they're out of a livelihood. So we're seeing them being very proactive to do things. So that's again
So there's a more steady supply pipeline.
The demand is steady.
The demand pipeline.
Absolutely, demand is steady. Liaising again is a big advantage over there versus what you would see in a big major metro. You will have the politicians welcoming you to put up a hotel there. You will have the bureaucrats welcoming you to put up a hotel there, because they need that for their own movement. Okay, so that's again a big plus.
So how impact on, and this is to the panel, any change in strategy in terms of a sales and marketing or a distribution strategy that would vary in a tier 3 or 4 town?
See, I'll tell you one thing. To us, when people come to us, they've already constructed a hotel or they're finishing stage. So there's nothing like inputs I have to give him. He's got a hotel and he's come to you. If you don't take it, then he'll go to Sarovar or he'll go to Fern. So it's a matter of tossing it out. So you take it and you have to then make the best of the bad bargain that you have. So there's no strategy involved. But yes, as Suhail also said, that certain places are manufacturing hub. I was myself amazed. I signed a hotel in Morbi, and just like you said, I didn't know where Morbi was. And, somebody came to me, said, sign it. Okay, signed it. And then when actually a hotel had opened and I went there, my God, I have never seen a town with so many ceramic factories. And they told me that, they produce probably more than what China does. And what value? I went to big showrooms, which are, 10 times bigger than this hall. And they said, tiles all over the place. I said, okay, okay, if I want to buy the tiles. Say, whatever. I said, what's the rate? He said, whatever you buy, 32 rupees a square foot. Who shocked him? I said, are you out of your mind? I'm getting 160 rupees a square foot I've been buying. And so all these bigger brands like Somani and all these things are buying from there. So there are a lot of hubs. Like Dahej, you said. Dahej is a hub of pharma. All right? And of course, most polluted place, whatever, Mr. Modi may talk or anything like that, it's the most polluted place. I mean, you can die if you go there. So, so there are pockets where a lot of manufacturing is happening, and some demand will be there. People will be visiting, for purchases and all that. But they're lower level. You don't have a high level guy coming and staying there. So,
sure. We have a little more than 10 minutes left, and there are a few questions both from the audience and online. If I can just go, so they're sorted, I understand, by the number of people that have liked. So the more popular questions are on top. So yeah, let's take the first one. Have you made, and again, through the three gentlemen there, but Rohit, also for you, if there are any changes, have you made changes to your management franchise and upfront signing fee? Or to broaden that question, have you made any changes to your structure overall in terms of giving any support or relief to your hotel owner partners in any order?
So I can go first. So,
Sure.
so if I'm just trying to add to what your earlier question was, right? So the what we did over the last few months or say a year plus is look at what support do we need to offer to hotels and how do we sort of go one step ahead. So the first thing we did was definitely increase the number of touch points our corporate support team has with hotels. So rather than the standard model where we do monthly reviews, etc., we were a lot more proactive. We realized that also a lot of our trainings or approach to trainings had to be changed. In fact, just by coincidence, we had launched an online training platform just a year and a half back. So it was perfect timing. We were able to utilize the training platform. That helped us quite a lot from just putting out the new modules of trainings on to educate our teams on how to deal with the pandemic and all the new standards we were launching. For example, what we call the Fortune Safe Stays. So that was one. The second was we, of course, realized that some of the traditional segments and business sources have either taken a pause or slowed down. For example, corporate, right? So we realized that corporate was not a segment which would be coming up in many locations for at least the short term. So we had to try and look at how do we increase support to hotels. So whether it was, sporting events, example, say the ISL or the BCCI related events. So going to some of these new sort of segments, looking at that. We started looking at weddings very differently because weddings used to be typically driven at unit level. So we started looking at how do we do a centralized approach to weddings. So from a sales and marketing perspective, we looked at that. We also took this opportunity to work with ITC hotels because we were on two different distribution systems. So we actually now have one centralized distribution system. So all our hotels are transitioning onto the combined distribution system, which of course means that our power to distribute has just doubled. So that's the next one we did. So what we have done is focus more on that. Unlike, thankfully, because of the parent company we were able to retain all our resources, so we didn't have to let go of people. So unlike many other companies which might have unfortunately had to let go of people just because of cash flow challenges, thanks to the parent, we were able to keep all our resources and energize them and allocate them into areas where we felt was necessary. So we also looked at certain markets which were coming up as new source markets, especially from a leisure perspective, and reassign resources. And that's what we did. We didn't do much in terms of fees because fees are typically percentages of revenue, so it's not really a big indicator. But the other thing which we did do was, at least for the first couple of quarters, we had in our model we allocate our general managers to hotels, unlike some of the international brands who do have a GM allocated, but it's straight on the payroll of the owner. In our case, it's on my payroll and then debited to the hotel cost. So we also took a hit on that across most locations, keeping our relationships in mind. Apart from that, signing fees, these are upfront signing fees. Commercial negotiations go depending on what you're looking for future, right? So I think there are.
I won't press you for an answer on that.
Absolutely, thank you.
Rohit, there's one for you specifically. Again, if you want to rephrase that and tell us a little more about Townhouse Palette and Oh Your Life, there seems to be a question on that.
Got it. So essentially, Townhouse is one of the loved brands. I think this is a brand which is launched about 3-4 years back. We also have an extension called Townhouse Oak now. Palette is a resort brand in leisure markets, and Oh Your Life is our co-living brand, which is where a lot of young professionals and students stay on short to medium term leases. So how would I rate my success? That's asking like parent to choose between different children and see which one is the favorite. So that I won't get into. I think all three have very different clienteles. People use them for different reasons. On Microsoft, that's a partnership we are very excited about. I think as I started saying, we are primarily a product tech company, and with Microsoft, it opens up doors to significant innovation on the cloud platform, on what we can do with them on the consumer side, the kind of collaborations that we can develop on the partner side. So this is great news. I think this got announced sometime few weeks back. It's a global partnership with them, and early days. We just announced it, just gotten going on this, but delighted to have Microsoft on board, both as a partner as well as a shareholder.
Thank you. I think the panelists have answered early on about how many hotels they signed up in the last 18 months. But if I can get a quick, candid response on how many you may have lost from your portfolio as a result of the pandemic.
No, we didn't lose any as a result of the pandemic.
No.
Because everybody, yes, some of them expecting the fees to be waived off, which we have to understand. So some fees have to be waived off, we waive off the fees.
We lost one.
So we have
Suhail?
one that hasn't really opened up yet. It's stuck for funds to be able to reopen because they've not had money to pay their electricity bills to reopen the hotel.
Tough times.
Tough times.
The other one here is, I think the other two are kind of linked, talking about the leisure market and the travel trade. What percentage of your business in the smaller towns do you see, or even in that mid-market space, from a leisure point of view? And what sort of support are you getting and anticipating from the travel trade? Also, the role of a travel agent was discussed in the session yesterday. Maybe again, Suhail, if you want to lead that.
So the role of a travel agent has evolved significantly with COVID. I think a lot of their role now is towards MICE movement. We're still getting their business towards the MICE movement, towards weddings, towards creating boutique experiences for guests. But general business coming from the travel trade has definitely decreased a lot. And I don't see that bouncing back in the same way that it was earlier.
Samir?
I think maybe the travel trade has just expanded with the digital medium coming in, right? So traditionally, the travel trade used to just be the travel agencies, but now it's also the online travel business, right? So whether it's MMT or the
So
likes.
the channel that the business
So
comes
it's
through
just
has gone from
different
offline
model,
to
right?
online.
So the business will continue. People will continue going to specialists to get insights and advice, right? So, and we continue building relationships. So that's our job to do.
See, group travel and weddings or any other specialized, you need a travel agent. You can't do it online. So I think there is a role which these guys have, and I think so we are maintaining our relationship with them, where travel agents or event managers or so, they will stay. It's not that they will go away, but of course, as you said, the major, in fact, now MMT is offering the travel agents a platform to book through them. So I think that type of thing is happening. A lot of business has gravitated toward them. Of course, I would say hats off to OYO because they're not dependent on Make My Trip. They get their own business directly. So hotels will also start thinking of getting so, but then that requires really deep pockets and big money. I don't think we can have that kind of spend to that business, direct business.
Right.
And as say Batu was saying that we are looking at the second time he visits, you incentivize them. But if you're incentivizing that much, then you might have to go through MMT now. So if you're giving whatever 15-20% to Make My Trip, and if you're going to incentivize him more than that, then let it go status quo now. Why are you so worried about him coming through a OTA?
Last question, especially to the three hotel companies. Open to franchise or third-party management?
See, franchise is a little difficult business in India. We are open to it. We have done some franchises. But in certain cases is required, because one guy said that I'm studied hotel management in Switzerland and I want your franchise. Now I can't do a better job. My GM from wherever I get, he won't do a better job than this guy. So I said, go ahead, no problem. You run the hotel, I'll give you a franchise. But we've had some bad experiences also. One or two cases where the fellows didn't have money. He's stressed. So he doesn't maintain the hotel property. So there have been, I would say, cases, one or two cases where we had to let them go. Because we said, no, you're really ruining
But
our
in principle, you're open to it.
We're open to it. In fact, we are, today, we have got a number of hotels which are franchised, and a lot of people are asking us for franchise. We're open to it. But we are putting in now strict measures to see that, he maintains standards. You have got your mystery audits, you got your regular audits, and then we provide services in a la carte. Suppose he wants training, we'll give him training. And as you were saying, online, we have a hotel management since the last almost 30 years.
Sure.
And we've gone online. So we provide all those services, HR, everything we'll provide on a la carte.
Thank you. So my colleague's going to ring the bell on me. So very quickly, yes, no?
So we've shied
Samir?
away from all franchises.
Okay.
In fact, we're happy to look at a revenue share or a lease arrangement now, but franchise is not a model that we're opening to.
Samir?
Not a preferred model, but open to looking at it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The screen is very clear. Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much for your time.
Thank
Thank you, everyone,
you.
for
Thank you.
spending your time with us.
Thank you.